Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Create and Consume, a podcast about what we make, watch, and buy in the era of digital content. I'm your host, Austen Tosone. Today is actually a pretty exciting day, if I do say so myself. It is my 30th birthday. You guys are listening to this episode a few days after, but today, September 3rd, I am 30 years old. I thought it would be fun, since this is a milestone birthday, to do a birthday episode and talk about some of my previous favorite birthdays growing up and other milestone birthdays, just to share some fun stories and also reflect on some of my biggest lessons and takeaways from my 20s. I am wearing my In My 30s era t-shirt that my mom got me back in June, I think. She handed it to me and she said, "I'm going to give this to you now because I will forget about it by the time September rolls around." So it was a good thing she did. I did a little birthday photo shoot wearing this t-shirt with Karya. I will put some pictures on the Instagram for the podcast if you'd like to check them out. But I really just wanted to spend my birthday with you guys because since the podcast is so new, I know that everyone who listens to it is truly a loyal listener. And for that, I am so grateful. So, with that being said, let's get into what we're creating and consuming this week. I actually already jumped the gun because what I wrote for what I'm creating this week is my birthday photos that I shot with Karya. So we met up in Soho last week and took some photos of me wearing this t-shirt that says "In My 30s era." It's very cute. It was from Etsy. I will add a link to the show notes and the blog post for this episode in case you're turning 30 this year as well, or you know someone who is. And I actually have a whole blog post that I should add this photo to about how to do a birthday photo shoot. Obviously, this is maybe a little extra, some would say, but at the end of the day, I think it's a cool way to just look back and reflect on what you looked like each year of your life and to take some cute new updated photos. I mean, I feel like we always need new photos, and I actually think I'm going to change my profile photo to one of the photos that we took just because I love it so much. I feel like it captures the essence of me bopping around New York City. I've got a cute hairstyle. I've got my t-shirt on. We're in Soho. We mean business. I just absolutely loved it. And I feel like it's time for an update. I think Jesse and I shot my previous profile photo or my current profile photo. I think I've probably updated it by now. I feel like that must have been in 2021. So it was time for an update, time for something a little new, and I'm really loving the pictures that we took. So shout out to Karya for accommodating my birthday photo shoot request. Typically, she shoots New York City street style. We first connected and met through Fashion Week, and I couldn't think of anyone else who I would want to take those photos for me. So that is something that I was creating last week. And then I actually have two things that I'm consuming this week, which why not? It's my birthday. Let's add something else in there. Right after I shot with Karya, I actually walked over to Madewell in Soho and I wasn't expecting to buy anything. However, I found like one of my probably perfect pairs of jeans, if I could describe it as that. I have been really loving the Abercrombie Relaxed Fit jeans, and I bought two pairs of those last year, but I wanted more of like a straight leg jean, kind of like your classic mom jean. And I went into Madewell not knowing what I was going to find. I tried on a pair that I really liked. They fit me nicely, like in the legs, but they were huge on the waist. And I showed the sales girl like how they were fitting me. And she said, "Oh, if you want the closer fit on the waist, but that straight leg look, I would definitely recommend these." So she pulled out a pair of the 90s straight leg jeans and they fit me so perfectly. So I went to go buy them, and they were also having a Labor Day sale. So it was like the stars could not align any better. We love when this happens. So I purchased those, and I'm looking forward to styling them and wearing them this fall. I like where they fall on the ankle because I feel like they would look cute with either low top or high top sneakers, but also with ankle boots. So I feel like there's a lot of versatility of the ways that I could style them. And then the second thing I'm consuming, which I thought was going to be something I would talk about next week, but I ended up finishing this book really quickly, was Margot's Got Money Troubles. It's actually right behind me on the top of this little stack on the side table. If you guys are watching on YouTube, I borrowed it from the Hoboken Library, so shout out to them for having it ready for me. So this was a really interesting read, and if you guys listened to the books episode I did a few episodes before this, I think it was episode 15 in my reading era, I talked about how sometimes the best way to get back into reading is to find a book that sounds like a juicy piece of gossip you want to know more about. This, I feel like, fits that criteria perfectly. So, Margot is 19, she's in college, she has an affair with her professor and ends up pregnant. So then she decides to keep the baby, and in order to support herself and the baby, she starts an OnlyFans account. I mean, if you don't want to keep reading after hearing that, that is, you have a lot of self-restraint and you're not as nosy as I am. I really loved the writing in this book. There was a lot of dialogue. It was a very fast-moving book, and there was some interesting things done with perspective in the writing itself as well. So I'll leave it at that. Let me know if you guys read this, and of course, if you are creating and consuming other things that you want to share with me, leave a comment over on our Instagram at Create and Consume Pod. TikTok is the same handle, or come and say hi in the inbox. It's create and consume podcast at gmail.com. That is what I have been creating and consuming this week. And let's get into today's topic of birthdays. I have been someone, I feel like, who has gotten a lot more chilled out about their birthday over the years. I think when I was younger, it felt like another version of, whatever your favorite holiday was growing up. If your favorite holiday was Christmas, like your birthday was just as good as Christmas, if not maybe even a little bit better, because it was all about you. And also growing up, I was an only child, as I'm sure you guys have heard me talk about before already. So birthdays were definitely something that I loved and got to look forward to each year. And my birthday would roll around at the beginning of September, and I always loved this because my birthday is early in the month, so it feels like the start of a new month, something fresh is ahead. It obviously also feels like the start of a new season approaching because fall is going to start later this month. For me, also growing up, it was about going back to school, like getting new school supplies, getting organized, thinking about the year ahead. And to me, this is really like where, if I made the calendar, if I were president, I feel like the year would start in September, and it just makes me feel like a chance to get realigned, get reorganized, and think about the year ahead and also reflect on the previous year too. I don't know. I mean, when you start seeing the leaves change and everything, like fall is just such a magical season. It just makes me so happy. And that is kind of like what my birthday signifies to me, is just the start of like a lot of good things ahead for the remainder of the year. So this is almost like my January 1st in some ways. It's kind of how I view things, even though my birthday is the 3rd. But either way, I just really love the excitement that comes with, oh, you're another year older, like here's, all of the things to look forward to coming up this year. One of the earliest birthday activities that I remember being totally obsessed with was spin art. And if you're a 90s kid, maybe you know what I'm talking about. So spin art was, they had this little machine. My parents must have rented it for my birthday one year, where you would basically take a piece of drawing paper or construction paper, I forget what it was, and you would tape it down onto this rotating pedestal, I guess, and you would have paint. It almost looked like in original, like squirty ketchup bottles, you would have different paint, and you would squeeze the paint onto the paper below. And because it was spinning, when the paint landed, it would splatter everywhere and it would make this really cool effect. And when you were done adding paint, the machine would stop and you would take out your piece. You obviously had to like let it dry and everything, but you basically had this like kind of splattery, I don't know, Jackson Pollock-y kind of creation that you just made because you were kind of just like tossing color around. And I remember that being such a core memory. I thought that was the coolest thing that we had one of those even for the afternoon to play with and to make spin art with. That is definitely one of my earliest birthday memories. I must have been like 4 or 5 for that one, maybe. Parents, if you're listening, please text me after this and let me know. And then there were just so many others throughout the years too. Like when I started getting more into fashion, I think this must have been a sleepover, like a slumber party birthday, which once I was old enough to start having sleepovers, that suddenly became like my obsession because I just thought it was so much fun to like constantly have friends around. you would be able to, like, you didn't have to say goodbye at the end of the night. You just got to like stay over at each other's houses. I didn't care how uncomfortable a sleeping bag was. I don't think any kid fully like grasped how uncomfortable that probably was, just like sleeping on your friend's floor in your sleeping bag, but it didn't matter because you were just so happy to be there. I remember like early sleepovers of other friends' birthdays. We would like stay up doing karaoke or like playing video games or things like that. Oh my god, the like magic of an early 2000s sleepover just will never fade to me. But I think this must have been a sleepover birthday because I don't remember there being too many girls there. I think I must have been maybe like, oh boy, 12, maybe. I'm going to say 12, but I could be wrong. And one year, like I said, I had gotten more into fashion. We did like a little competition where we split into two teams. And I think there were only like four girls on each team. So I think this was like, you're not inviting the whole class anymore at that point. Like you really start to just invite who your friends are. And we essentially had like a Project Runway style competition to see who could make the best dress out of just like garbage bags or those plastic tablecloths. We had like yarn, we had gems and stuff that we could glue on, and then we did a little runway show. I remember my team won because it was my birthday, but the dress that the other team made was definitely way better than ours. But like by virtue of the fact that it was my birthday, our team had to win, but the other team, their construction was more thoughtful. I think they did a better job technically, but and who was judging? Probably my mom. So, but I just remember having so much fun doing that. I forget how much time we had, but it really felt almost like we were in an episode of Project Runway. And I think that just goes to show like there are so many things that you can do when you just like let your imagination run wild. I genuinely believe that I would have just as much fun doing that today as I did like over 20 years ago at this point. And I just think that there are so many fun ways you can celebrate your birthday, especially like when you're growing up. One year, probably a little before that, I was maybe 8 or 9. I started to like have more input on the themes of my birthday. And I remember I was equally obsessed, and this makes absolutely no sense, by the way. I was equally obsessed with both the Spy Kids franchise, as one was back in the day. I mean, Alexa Vega, I wanted to be her, and palm trees. Like so niche. Like what was I doing being so obsessed with the idea of a palm tree at the time? Like that was my first email address. There was a fake palm tree in my room. Like what, when did I start getting so into that? I don't really know. But because I loved both of those two things, we combined them. And I remember this would make no sense unless you were like there at the time, but I combined them and the party theme was Spy Kids meets the tropics. I don't know. What can I say, guys? I think I was like literally 9 years old. And it's funny because I was just at my parents' this past weekend. We went out to a little early birthday dinner at a restaurant called Biagio in northern New Jersey. It was so delicious. First of all, the pasta that we had a fried burrata appetizer, like really, really good Italian spot if you haven't tried it yet and you live in the area. But I was helping them clean out like what was my toy closet in the basement from back in the day. And we were getting rid of some games that I just don't play anymore. We kind of kept like the Scrabbles and the Clue for when I'm home, but we were clearing out some other stuff, and I pulled out the Twister game, and we had recreated Twister, the game where you put your hands and feet on the spots, to be Spy Kids meets the Tropic themed. And I guess I haven't played Twister since then, or if I have, I've just been playing. I'm like, I don't remember playing Twister recently, that I had just been playing like the palm tree and the, oh my goodness. Anyway, all these different things. And I just thought it was so funny that it was still there. So what we had done was we had taken like some kind of clear plastic and covered Twister. And I had cut out like a rainbow palm tree and just a green palm tree. And then I cut out like Carmen and Junie, I think from Spy Kids, or maybe I did Spy Kids 1 and Spy Kids 2, cut out pictures of those and put them on the spots. So if you like spun the wheel, and I changed the wheel too, I put like plastic wrap around the wheel, changed the whole game. So it would be like, okay, you spun on a rainbow palm tree instead of like that was where all the yellows once were. So those are just some fun stories from early birthdays past. And it got me thinking about other milestone birthdays I've had in my life. one of which was my Sweet 16. I didn't really want to do anything that crazy. The main criteria that I really wanted was to be able to invite a lot of people. Like, I played soccer in high school. I wanted to be able to invite as many of my like soccer teammates as I could. I also did a cappella, stuff like that. And I wanted to wear two dresses. So I wanted to have an outfit change, which people always say, like, oh, when I was getting married last year, people were like, oh, are you going to do a dress change? And I was like, yeah. And they would be like, oh, that's kind of a trendy thing to do right now. Let the record show that for my 16th birthday party, I had one dress that I wore. I'm about to admit something so embarrassing. I had one dress that I wore when guests arrived. They stepped in. I swear, in another life, I was an event planner. They would step into literally the Ridgewood Women's Club, okay? Like this rec center, essentially. They would step in, and I would be standing there in my dress that I got from Rent the Runway. I still remember it was a gold Badgley Mishka strapless dress. It literally looked like I was an Oscar statue. And they would come and step in and take a photo with me in front of a custom step and repeat. Okay, like a step and repeat is one of those photo things that if you ever see celebrities at award shows standing in front of one and it says like VMAs and like the network or something on the background, that's what a step and repeat is. I had a custom one made for my Sweet 16 so that they would come in, we would take pictures together. So I got pictures with everyone, and then they would go into the party. And that when I re-entered the party in a different dress, I walked out to Vogue by Madonna, as one does. And those are the two standout things that I remember about my Sweet 16 were the step and repeat and all the photos I got to take, and the fact that I had an outfit change. So if you were wondering, I am still the same person that I was when I was 16, which was now officially a whole half life ago for me. And then for my 21st birthday, I was an orientation leader at Columbia University for new incoming students. So it was the start of my senior year, and I got to move in a full week and a half early, I think, to be an orientation leader. I specifically was an orientation leader for transfer students because I transferred to Barnard my sophomore year. So I was able to have a group of new transfer students like answer their questions about, did I just make a big mistake, or like what are things like here, how is it different. So I loved doing that. I did that my junior and senior year that I went to school in the city. And for my 21st birthday, it was right before school started. Orientation was kind of winding down. So we basically just got a group of the other orientation leaders together and went out in the city. We went to a bar called The Heights in Morningside Heights, which I had never been to in my whole life before I turned 21, obviously. So I'd been hearing about it for years. It was my first time there. And I got some frozen margaritas. And I remember we ended the night, a couple of us got Cornets, which was this pizza place. I believe it's still there, actually, that would serve these ginormous slices of pizza. So, like, one at the end of the night, and you were good, until you rolled out of bed at noon and wanted to go get your bagel the next morning. And we just ended the night eating a giant slice of Cornet's pizza on the steps of Low Library on Columbia's campus. And it was a beautiful, like, warm, early fall night, just like the weather today. Oh my gosh, I just had so much fun. I just truly had a blast. And it was so crazy to be like, I'm 21, I live in New York City, I'm about to graduate from college. Like, everything was just so exciting, and there was so much ahead. And then the last milestone birthday, I feel like before 30, was 25. And I remember for my 25th birthday, I had been dating Andrew for a few years already, and I was freelancing at this point. So I was like making my own schedule, living my best life, doing my thing in the city. I had that birthday party at this place called Rare Rooftop in New York City, and Rare has since closed. And every time that I have a birthday roll around, I find myself really missing that spot because it had a perfect clear shot view of the Empire State Building. I think it was on like 36th and Madison or something. It wasn't necessarily an area I hung out in a ton, but no one really knew about it. There was no like cover to get into the roof. There was no minimum spend. You didn't need to reserve a table, but there always was one there. And that was the last birthday, I feel like, before the pandemic, where I got to see like all my friends, and everything just like felt so good and exciting. And like 25, like what could possibly go wrong? Something so simple and magical about it. And also because I would usually celebrate like right after Labor Day weekend, I feel like it was never too overly crowded. I feel like some people in their head maybe thought rooftop season was over. And so that was the perfect time to like get a group together to go out to a rooftop because it would still be beautiful weather, but it wouldn't be totally jam packed. And obviously, turning 30 has got me in my feels, got me reflecting and thinking about a lot of things. So I thought it would be fun to share some of the biggest lessons and takeaways from my 20s with you. Originally, I wanted to make this a list of 30 things, but to be honest, it kind of just kept coming back to some of the same main themes over and over again. And I'd rather talk more in depth about a few small, well, not small, but like a few points versus just going through a long list and saying one sentence about each and moving through it quickly just for the sake of like hitting that number, you know? Let's start out with what I think one of the most important lessons I've learned in my 20s is, which is that spending time with yourself and falling in love with your own personality and rooting for yourself is one of the best things that I think a person can do. And I'm so grateful and appreciative to have such a good balance in my life of getting to spend time with people I love, but also having that alone time to just like spend time in my own thoughts and recharge my social battery so that when I do see friends and family that I can be on and excited to see them and I don't just turn into like a recluse, which I feel like is actually sort of easy for me to do. I'm pretty extroverted in the sense that I'll talk to anyone. I love creating content. Like doing all of this excites me and it doesn't exhaust me, but if I don't give myself that time alone to like recharge or watch 6 episodes of Love Island and just kind of zone out for a little while, then I can't be as extroverted as I can be or I want to be. Spending time by myself and also really coming to terms with my own opinions about any number of things. It could be something as serious as like politics or religion, or as simple as like, do I really like my Stanley Cup or do I just have one because everyone has one? And just thinking through like all of these different things and really asking myself, what do I feel about it? What is my point of view on it? I think has given me a lot of self-confidence because I really know myself. And it's just given me a chance to be a better, partner to Andrew, a better friend to my friends, a better daughter to my parents, because I don't have to constantly question who I am and what I'm doing, even though that comes up from time to time. I feel like because I spend a lot of intentional time alone and because I'm always thinking about stuff like that, that it's just made me a more self assured person. And I'm so much more self confident and self assured now than I was in my early 20s. I think I probably acted like I was pretty confident back then as more of a like fake it till you make it thing. But even though in some ways I don't feel like I've quote unquote made it yet, I believe that everything is all going to work out because I know who I am, I know what my goals are, and I know that I'm just doing my best every day to try to hit all of those milestones. One of my favorite kind of life lessons that I personally feel like I have learned through social media and just through following different accounts that really inspire me or just bring a smile to my face is the idea of romanticizing your life every day. I feel like I am living what is really close to my dream life right now. I feel like so many things have kind of fallen into place for me over the last few years, whether it is a result of like hard work or sometimes just a case of good luck and good timing. But to me, even on days where maybe I'm not feeling my best or maybe I'm wishing that, something was different in my life, romanticizing my life as it is right now and living in the moment and enjoying the moment is something that truly started out as like a silly little social media trend, but is kind of something that's almost like indoctrinated into how I live my life every day now. So if that means going on a 30-minute hot girl walk around my neighborhood and listening to a podcast that makes me smile, or getting an iced coffee for no particular reason, just because I want to support a small business or because I'm really craving the Hive's iced chai latte or the matcha from Mojo Coffee or whatever it happens to be, even if it's filling my Stanley with 90% ice and 10% water, or lighting a candle that smells good at the end of the day. Just all of those little things where I feel like you're making intentional small choices to make your life and your reality right now as good as it can be. Another big life lesson from my 20s that I think I'm still learning and still, still have some days where the scale is more weighted one way than the other is all about balance. I really believe that when you have balance in everything, it makes life like so much more stable, but also fun at the same time, which is another good balance. And I guess what I mean by that is having a balance of like, I usually cook here on weeknights, like a Sunday through Thursday. I'm cooking, I'm eating healthy at home as much as I can. But on Friday and Saturday, I'm going to order pizza. I'm probably going to have a beer. Like, those things in regard to balance that help me live an overall mostly healthy and fulfilling life are things that are important to me now that I don't know at the beginning of my 20s I really thought about or realized. In my early 20s, I was living in an apartment in Brooklyn with two roommates. So we had a small kitchen. Everyone was really busy. I would very often either order takeout or pick up food because it was just so much easier than trying to cook, or things get mixed up in the refrigerator or whatever. I'm sure I had any number of excuses because I really didn't even like cooking back then. And cooking to me now is less about, oh my God, I love cooking, and more about, I would rather take a little bit of time to like make a healthy meal for myself and for Andrew too. Like, the fact that I have flexibility where in my schedule, it's not that big of a deal for me to kind of meal plan for us and to cook. I know is something he really appreciates too. It's like one less thing for him to think about and worry about, because he thinks about and worries about a lot of other things related to our lives that I wouldn't know the first thing about. And even on the balance front, there are so many healthy, quote unquote, foods that you can make taste amazing. And I think it's just a matter of trial and error and figuring out the things that work best for you. Another piece of balance I've been thinking about this year is fun books versus like self improvement or career type books, because for a while, I was talking about this in the reading episode too, I really got fixated on reading career books. I was reading a lot of like designer autobiographies, books about social media and marketing, and I still like books like that. But I also really love reading for fun. I've really fell back in love with fiction in the last 2 years, especially after coming out of a reading rut in 2020 and 2021. And to me, having this balance of like, oh, I'm going to read Margot's Got Money Troubles this week about, this like pregnant woman who dropped out of college and started an OnlyFans account. And then on the other side of it, my parents just got me this book for my birthday all about productivity, written by someone who like leads productivity and project management at Google. And I'm like, I'm just as interested in both of those things. And the balance is what makes me swing from one way to another too. If I was just reading this really fun book where it was a little bit more of like that fiction, quick moving, fast paced book, then switching off and diving into something that probably I won't read as quickly and I'll want to soak in and digest, that's a bit more serious and could actually help me with my career. Like, that is the kind of balance that I look for. So I just wanted to share a few of those examples to kind of illustrate the point, because sometimes I feel like people say balance is everything, work life balance. Like, I wouldn't necessarily say I have a work-life balance. I feel like I have pretty good work-life integration, but where I do have balance in my life, it really shows up more prominently in those other areas. I am also a really big believer that hard work does pay off in the end. I have been creating content online for over 12 years at this point, and even though I don't have a million followers, I am able to work with brands that I love. I'm able to support myself through content creation. I'm able to create content I'm really proud of from a creative standpoint and try new mediums. Like, even if I never hit a million followers, which honestly sounds really overwhelming, like, shout out to anyone with more than a million followers who is able to stay sane, because that just sounds like so much like community management, especially in the comments section. But I don't know. Like, I truly have seen my hard work pay off over the years, whether it's because I went to so many networking events in my early 20s, especially things like New York Fashion Week or just events that beauty brands would host. And because I would show up early, say hi to the person who invited me, try to meet at least like three other content creators or editors who I'd never met before. I feel like I've built this like really robust and huge network where now, like, if I ever, for example, needed to call in a favor or really wanted to work with a brand, like I feel like I have contacts for almost everything. And now, especially like post COVID, it honestly takes a lot more energy to go to events and to be that extroverted and to continue to network. Like, even though I want to, sometimes it's still like, you have to talk yourself into going or say, if you go to this, then maybe you'll do that later. Every once in a while, I'm so grateful, obviously, to always be invited to things. But now I also get to like make the decision, oh, it's okay if I skip this event because I've already been to 3 events that this person has invited me to. Like, they know who I am, they know that I would want to be there to support them, but I just happen to not be able to make it today. Like, there are things that are much easier for me now because I already put in the work back then. Same thing with stuff like YouTube ad revenue and writing blog posts and being on a blog ad network. Like, all of that long form content that I've been creating for the last several years like pays me back now, and I can literally see the return on my investment from a monetary standpoint because I make ad revenue on blog posts that I wrote months or even years ago. I make ad revenue on YouTube videos that I posted months or even years ago. And I have seen firsthand that hard work pays off later on. And that is a lesson that is something I do carry into my 30s too. Like, I was working so hard every single day of my 20s, and I'm so grateful that I did because I would ideally like to work a little less in my 30s, but know that when I do work, I'm putting in 100% of myself and I'm just working to deliver like the best content I can or the best project I can. And I just think it's so cool. And it's something I'm so proud of to have all of this that I built to look back on and be evidence of that too. Another huge lesson that I've learned is that it's okay to ask for help when you need it. This is something that I really used to struggle with in my early 20s. I would never want to tell people when I wasn't going to be able to meet a deadline or when I was feeling overwhelmed or, you know, all of those different things. I think it's just been a huge learning curve to realize that there are people who want to help me and who will help me if I do ask. But if I don't ask, people don't know that I need help with certain things. I think also from like a pride standpoint, I was really hesitant to hire help in my business for a long time. I kind of had like a money scarcity mindset too, I would say, where like, oh, I'm making this money, I should really hold on to it. But it turns out, like, hiring Sean, for example, who edits all my YouTube videos, that was a really great investment of mine because I am investing that money back into my YouTube channel. It's not like, oh, I got it and I'm going to spend it on, I don't know, 300 pinatas that I'm going to use once and then never touch again. It's not like I'm going out and blowing that money on something stupid. I'm thinking of pinatas, I guess, because of the birthday thing. But it's not like I am doing that. I'm taking that money and reinvesting it into my channel and my business so that I can continue to grow. So I think working around things like those scarcity mindsets or like, oh, I don't want to bother people right now, your friends want to know if something's going on with you. They want to know how they can help you. They want to know how to be there for you. Same thing with your partner, with your family. Like, I'm just really lucky that I have a lot of people now that I feel like I can go to when I need help with certain things. But if you feel like you don't have someone that you can go to right now, you can always talk to a therapist. I have done therapy a few times in my life. I actually recently restarted therapy, which I don't think I've talked about anywhere yet. So you guys can hear it from me first. And there is just a lot to be said for talking to someone who is not really directly involved in your life and who their sole purpose is to be there to listen to you. So that's just my little word of encouragement that you can always ask for help if you need it. Another lesson that I am still working on that I'm not the best at is that flexibility is one of the best skills that you can adapt as a person. And I have had to learn to be flexible in so many different areas of my life, whether it's business related and I need to adjust my earnings. Like, I remember the first time that brand partnerships started to slow down a few years ago because there were so many more influencers to work with. I was just like, what's going on? Where is all of the money that I was making for a little while there? I had to be flexible and say, well, if I'm not getting income from this revenue stream, then maybe I need to start another one. And that's led to a lot of changes over the course of my business in how I make money, how I approach slow seasons of business, how I handle situations when I'm dealing with a difficult client, which very rarely happens, I will say, especially because I get to be my own boss and suss out who I think might be a difficult client and then say, maybe some other time, or I don't have the bandwidth right now. And then even thinking about things in my personal life, like if a friend has to cancel a plan that we made, or if I have to cancel something on them, or if, a flight gets delayed and how I react to things like that. The ability to be flexible and to just have a little wiggle room, given that life is going to happen and you really can't plan for everything, I think that is one of the best skills that you can have because it will make you less reactive and make you less stressed because you can account for that unexpected factor and say, well, there had to be something that happened here, or there had to be something that fell through, even though I really wanted to get dinner with this friend tonight. They have a work deadline. Like, what's being upset about that going to get me? You can even have the most perfectly laid out plan and things can change. I mean, I spent the entirety of my college career pretty much interning at magazines to get a job at a magazine and ultimately become an editor. That's what I did. And I got laid off from 2 different magazines because the whole industry was changing and shifting. What was I going to do? Just take another third print magazine job only to continue to get laid off and not make any progress? I didn't necessarily want to have to pivot as hard as I did, and especially as young as I did. But once I did, and once I really leaned into freelancing and making connections and social media, look where it got me. That I wouldn't have had any of this if I had just been a stick in the mud and said, well, I spent all this time wanting to be a magazine editor, so I'm just going to keep being a magazine editor. Maybe it would have worked out. Maybe if I really had stuck with it, I would have climbed up the ranks, but I also wouldn't have had so many opportunities that I've had that I created for myself. There are so many people who I wouldn't have had a chance to meet or work with, and everything happens for a reason. That's not a lesson in here, but it should be. And on a similar note to that, if things aren't going the way that you were hoping they would, if things haven't turned out the way you expected that they would, it might not happen overnight, but you do have the power in your life to make changes and to make things better for yourself. This isn't really a lesson from my 20s, but I even remember how scared I was at the time when I applied to transfer colleges after my freshman year. I liked where I was and I had really good friends, but I was just feeling like there was more out there, that I wanted more for myself. And I also really missed being in an urban environment, even though I was at a very idyllic liberal arts college in Pennsylvania, which is what I thought I wanted for my college experience. As it turned out, I was just really missing the city. I was young. I was like eager to get to work. And when I applied to transfer to Barnard and I got in, that changed the whole trajectory of my life. I mean, if I hadn't done that, I feel like I wouldn't have gotten all the jobs that I did. I wouldn't have met Andrew. Like, there are so many things that just wouldn't have shaken out the way that they did had I not done that. And I'm really glad that even back then, at the age of like 19, I had the foresight to make a change and say, I feel like I could be on a slightly different path or a slightly better path than I am right now. I think, especially in the last few years, we're becoming a lot more adaptable to things like this. But if you've moved somewhere that you don't like, you can always move back. If you are in a job that you don't love, you can always change jobs. It might not happen overnight and it might take work, but if there's something that isn't going the way you want it to, you do have the power to make changes in your life, even if they are on a small scale, to make things more bearable before you're able to take bigger leaps. You all are probably pretty familiar with this lesson already, but don't believe everything you see on social media. There are plenty of times where I have had a bad day and I've posted a positive quote, because even though I'm having a bad day, it doesn't mean I'm going to want to share it publicly, or it probably means that if anything, I want to process it alone. If you see a perfect family on social media, if you see a perfect couple on social media, if you see someone who seems to have the perfect job, like even someone who has it really good can still have a bad day. And you just will never know everything of what people are going through. Social media, even when we are authentic and even when we do open up about things, there's still always going to be a layer of knowing that other people are seeing you like that. And like being vulnerable, I think, is great, but it's not something that's required of every single person who has a social media presence. So if you're ever feeling down about yourself or comparing yourself to others, just remember that no one's perfect and there's always more to someone's real life than what they're willing to share online. I have two more lessons, and these are the serious ones, I would say. So, number one, just the importance of family. This is something that I feel like I've known my whole life, but I feel like really got shocked back into like being the top of my mind and like the number one absolute biggest priority at the start of the pandemic. My dad had a really terrible early case of COVID back when we barely had enough masks to go around. There were no vaccines invented yet. It was like a really scary time in my life, obviously, given the state of the world and the fact that it was impacting someone so close to me. We almost lost my dad, and I'm really grateful that we didn't. And it just makes all the time that we spend together now extra meaningful. And it's not like I didn't appreciate family or I wouldn't look to spend time with family before, but I do think I was very preoccupied with work and like growing my career and things like that. And at the end of the day, that's great. It's nice to be successful, but it's more important to me like how I show up for my family and what they think of me more than anything. And I'm sure a lot of people experienced that during COVID too. A lot of people, moved home to be closer to their families or had to go home for reasons maybe like mine, if you had a sick parent or someone in your family who was truly impacted by COVID. And again, it was never not important to me, but it really was like a big wake up call, especially like being in my early 20s, living in New York City, being very career focused, and having your whole world tossed upside down to just like really realign your priorities. Family can also mean your chosen family, your extended family, the friends who feel like family to you, just whatever's going on when someone really needs you. It's always worth showing up for them, especially when you know that they would do the same thing for you. And even though we're very lucky that my dad is still here with us, we lost Andrew's dad earlier this year. And that really hasn't been an easy thing to process and to deal with. But at the end of the day, what it really makes me remember and makes me realize is that you only live once and you get to decide how you spend your days when you wake up. If there are trips you want to go on, if there are places you want to see, if there are people you want to spend time with, don't wait for holidays, don't wait for things like that. Just do as much as you can that you want to do while you're here. I don't know if this is like too grim of a thing to say on a podcast, but like if, God forbid something happened to me today, I truly feel like I could look back on my life right now and say that I have like pretty much no regrets. And that is basically like how I want to continue to live my life going forward, knowing that if there is something I really want to do or see in my life, this is maybe a silly example, but even like going to the Eras tour, that occupied my brain for over a year. I just couldn't stop thinking about it. And even Andrew finally was like, let's go. You keep talking about it. Let's just go. Why not? If there are cities you want to live in, if there are books you want to read, if there are things you want to do, there's no time like the present to make a plan and find a time to do stuff that truly makes you happy. So, not to get so serious, but I do feel like that is one of the things that you think about as you get older. I'm getting older, people I love are getting older. We're all growing and aging together, and aging is a privilege. Like, I am so lucky and grateful to have spent 30 years on this floating marble in outer space. And I'm so grateful to have connected with all of the people that I have in the last 30 years. And I just can't even imagine how much fun we're going to continue to have in this decade and all of the ones that I'm lucky enough to live after that. I think if my 20-year-old self could see me today, she'd be pretty proud and pretty surprised at how her life has turned out so far. So, thank you guys so much for joining me for today's episode. I know it was a bit of a roller coaster of emotions, but I appreciate you sticking with me through it. I'm so excited to be entering my 30s with you all and to document my experiences, as always, here on the podcast and on my other social media platforms. So, as a reminder, you can support Create and Consume for free by doing any of the following. You can leave Apple and Spotify ratings and reviews. You can subscribe, and hit the notification bell if you watched this episode on YouTube. You can follow along at Create and Consume Pod on Instagram and TikTok. You can send this episode to a friend. And don't forget to check out createandconsumepodcast.com for episode recaps and more. Thanks so much for listening, and I'll talk to you soon.